Before I begin, I'd be interested to hear what you have learned over the last few days, if anything, or what you've forgotten. Anybody willing to say what you learned? Please.
I think the idea that I don't exist sunk in a little bit more.
The idea that I don't exist sunk in a little more. But you seem to be here with such vivid detail. What's your first name?
Deirdre.
Deirdre. You are so Deirdre. So how could you not exist?
Because I'm just a collection of things that constantly change.
You are a collection of things that constantly change, but isn't it also conventionally true that you're here, uniquely you? So we never want to forget that otherwise we take on a kind of extreme view of non-existence, which is if you take that extreme view without coupling it with your Deirdre-ness, then then we fall into attachment to emptiness. And what the Tibetans call this attachment to emptiness, they call it one-legged emptiness, emptiness without the compassion. Because we stop being merciful and compassion if I don't exist, then therefore it doesn't matter what I do or what anybody does. Of course it does. But I appreciate what you're saying. You realize more that deepest understanding that you don't exist as independently as you thought, perhaps.
I guess that I exist very conditionally.
Exactly. That we exist conditionally. Another way of saying that is we exist contingently, contingent on the elements of nature, contingent on parents, contingent on culture, contingent on all these things. There's no me, there's no Deirdre that exists completely independent of all those contingencies, all those conditions that have come together in that very unique and individual way called Deirdre. Because you're really, you have such Deirdre-ness to you. And everyone has that. So that practice doesn't lead to not being here. It's the same way as when we see through, when you look up at the sky, and I know many of you have heard this metaphor before, but when you look up at the sky at night, I think in the Edmonton sky you see the Big Dipper. Yes. Well, there is no Big Dipper. There is no Big Dipper. It's just a name of that collection of stars, and the concept teases those out apart from the other stars and names it. But when we see through that illusion that there's really no Big Dipper, in fact, you could say there's no stars and there's no sky. Those are also conceptual overlays. But when we see through all those illusions, does the Big Dipper disappear? No, those stars are still there in vivid detail. But they reveal themselves in relationship to everything around. Free, independent, no independent self-existence. Anyway, thank you for putting that out. Anyone else? Please. To hear.
I find that the greatest comfort for me is in my own peace and quiet.
Yes, we want to be heard, but our deepest comfort is in our own peace and quiet. Beautiful. Lovely. Anyone else? Please. You're learning it's very difficult.
Oh, it's a lot more difficult than I expected.
What is a lot more difficult than you expected? Whole process of being still. And shutting off the busyness. Do you mind if I say something? You don't have to be still, and you don't have to shut off the busyness. You simply have to notice your restlessness and notice the activity of your mind. there's a wonderful teaching from the Zen master Suzuki Roshi where he says, your thoughts and all that busyness are just the waves of your mind. They don't come from the outside, they're just the waves of your mind. And if you're not bothered by those waves, they will quiet down. But as long as you are bothered and try to stop your mind, it means you're bothered by it. And if you're bothered by those waves, they will torment you mercilessly. So the point of meditation is not to stop our busyness. Maybe it was just a use of language, but I wanted to say that to everyone, not just you. There is a tendency to want to use meditation to manipulate our mind. And what we really do is, all we manipulate, as I was mentioning to one of the groups, is the quality of our attention to create the conditions to be able to notice how busy or unbusy our mind is, to notice our screaming voice looking for attention or the peace and quiet, and to ultimately treat them as both changing conditions, as both equal. So what makes it difficult, I think, and you can tell me there's probably more to what makes it difficult. What makes it more difficult are one of three things that happen in regard to our practice. Not that this is strenuous and it is difficult to slow down and go against the stream of everything we've done. But what adds to the difficulty, and that's actually something I was going to talk about this afternoon, what adds to the difficulty is the presence of three common reactions in our mind. What the Buddha called the three root causes of suffering, otherwise known as the three poisons. Grasping, wanting what you don't have. And the second one, aversion, not wanting what you do have. And then the third one is called delusion. Delusion is, in the simplest way, it's the misidentification with what's happening. It's taking all of that busyness to be me and mine, exclusively. Now, relatively speaking, it's yours, it's not mine. But ultimately, it's just conditioning, as Deirdre was saying. Delusion is also just not just misidentification, but it's a misperception of whatever it is that's going on. And there's basically three common misperceptions, that the three main things that we misperceive that are really at the heart of our liberating insight if we can perceive them correctly. What are the three common misperceptions? See if anybody... What's that? That's right, not recognizing that. What else? I'll just put it in very simple terms. The three misperceptions are taking that which is impermanent to be permanent, taking that which is unreliable or unsatisfactory to be reliable and satisfactory. In other words, things that we think will give us some kind of lasting experience. It's not, doesn't give us any reliable. So taking what is impermanent to be permanent, what is unreliable to be reliable, and what is not self is taken to be self. And there really is nothing in this mind and body process, as Deirdre was saying. Nothing, as the Buddha stated, nothing whatsoever should be clung to as I, me, or mine. The way he added to this, he said, if you heard this teaching, you've heard the entire teaching. If you've practiced this teaching, liberation or non-clinging, you've practiced the entire teaching. If you've realized this teaching, then you've realized the whole of the Dharma. Nothing whatsoever should be clung to as I, me, or mine. Now, intellectually, that doesn't sound interesting, maybe. But when we see the amount of identity we have with the moods that are changing, the thoughts that are changing, the sensations that are coming, how much of it gets overlaid with this is the Big Dipper? How much it's overlaid with this is me, this is mine, rather than the understanding that this is the weather, the contingent nature of experience, arising according to conditions, here for a time, passing away. Not me, not mine. This I am not. That's the heart of the Buddha's realization. Now, of course, ultimately seeing through that self-illusion, as I mentioned a few times over this retreat, seeing through the self-illusion is also seeing through the illusion of other. How much do we create our sense of self by creating the other? They. And that's why I included in the equanimity prayer yesterday afternoon, politicians. They are often seen as the other, or the other party. At least we have that. We've got the inmates running the prison in our country. They're the other. But then I realized if I look into the hearts and minds of each of all these Tea Party maniacs and all the people who have no interest in the goodwill of all and only interest in their power, when I look at them, I have elements of that in my own heart and mind. Self-interest, selfishness, obliviousness, the impact of my actions on others. We all have that. So then that sense of duality melts away a little bit into the ocean of contingencies, of interconnectedness. So seeing through the illusion of self in every day, realizing how connected we are to everything and everyone around us is the fruit of seeing through the self-illusion. It's seeing through the illusion of other. Because otherwise, okay, I get to see, I saw through the illusion of self, aren't I wonderful? Hello, it's a new ego trip. But if it turns into love and caring, into connection, then it's genuine. How did I get off on that one? I have to be honest, this afternoon I'm a little bit, I've been, tried to, not to impose it on you, but I've been fighting this a little respiratory infection over this weekend. And I'm a little bit. Now I'm having fun because I get to speak with you, and I'd rather do it interactively if it's possible. There are some things I want to say before the end of the day, but I still want to hear from a couple more people what you've learned over the course of this weekend. Please.
I think the biggest learning for me was the difference. Like I thought to meditate is to sit and sort of
Hunker down.
Yeah. And now I see it's about expanding. Or remembering how it sounds like I'm on.
Yes, she thought that meditation was kind of hunkering down, and now she's seeing how meditation is more about realizing how expanded she is. Now, that's a funny little thing that happens in practice, though. As you know, we started the practice by gathering, by narrowing. But the funny paradox, you could say, is the more you refine, the more you narrow, the more you become that one point that begins to allow you to connect. So almost inevitably, people who practice in a very microscopic way, just the careful details, without even trying, as the practice goes on, their mind starts feeling more and more and more and more open until it doesn't have any limits to it. But that happens through the details. And the same is true that often when people practice, beginning their practice with this great openness, as they go along in the practice, their mind gets, that openness starts reflecting things more clearly, and people become much more detailed and precise. So our mind has many lenses. It's narrow, it's open, and we use, and hopefully you can do that now, you can use whatever skillful means helps balance your attention. So when you get too hunkered down and tight, you know that you have this vast space. When you get too spacey or spaced out, you can just remember that you have this capacity to gather it all, to come to the single point. So it's great. One last person. Please.
I'm glad you mentioned the word practice, because what I've learned is that it's very important practice.
It's very rewarding.
Very important
important to practice.
To keep it up because I dabbled in meditation really, I use that one consciously.
Yes.
For a number of years now, and I keep kind of going in and out and out. I had taken this retreat this weekend was a conscious decision on my part to
Reestablish your practice. Great.
I honestly feel quite wonderful right now. After the guided meditation, when I opened my eyes, I felt so light. And it was a feeling that I haven't had for a long time. And not that I think that it's a permanent feeling, but it's just an indication to me that I've taken a wayward route and I need to get back on. So practice.
Beautiful. Well, may it be so, and may it be so. I hope it takes root. Thank you. And hopefully, maybe for some people that metaphor of the sky works. And I just like to remind you that our mind is like the sky in its lightness and openness. But it's very different than the sky, in that the sky is just a blank nothing. It's just space. Our mind not only is open and light, which you felt that, the impact of that, but it also is imbued with all the qualities of intelligence and cognizance and responsiveness and compassion. Everything is within the nature of our mind. So it's very, it's a kind of rich sky as opposed to just an empty sky. In that case, it's just a metaphor. We could have used the metaphor of the ocean as well. In fact, I have a passage that I sometimes share. This is from the Advaita Vedanta tradition. It's called the boundless ocean. I am the boundless ocean. This way and that, the wind blowing where it will, drives the ship of the world, but I'm not shaken. I'm the unbounded deep, in whom the waves of all the worlds naturally rise and fall, but I do not rise and fall. I am the infinite deep in whom all the worlds appear to rise beyond all form, forever still. Even so am I. I am not in the world is not in me. I am pure, I am unbounded. Free from attachment, free from desire, still. Even so am I. That captures the... Oh, how wonderful. I am awareness itself, no less. The world is a magic show, but in me there is nothing to embrace and nothing to turn away. I am the boundless ocean.